Welcome to Recollections number 4. So let's get on with it. Today we're going to cover a very important topic, that is Pañca-Khandha. So before I begin, just make sure everybody has muted. And so one of the important thing we have to realize is to be aware. I can't seem to get myself in the screen. Okay. All right, one of the important things we have to be aware is that the most distinct areas where Bhante Punnaji translations and explanations offer deep insights into the original teachings of the Buddha, and these translations and explanations may appear different somewhat from popular or Western translations. By popular translation, I mean those translations based on Rice David's dictionary. So the main areas where Bhante differs greatly is firstly, the ability to discern what is mano, chitta, vijnana. Many teachers don't discern them. They simply call these, especially mano and chitta, they use it interchangeably without clarifying that what aspect of the mind they're talking about. But there are really three parts of our experience we call mind. Now, one thing I need to clarify, in some sutras, Buddha may use chitta, but does not necessarily mean the emotional mind. The word chitta is often used as a generic term to refer mind as a whole. So that is the part. But there are many sutras and many Dhammapada verses where the word chitta specifically means emotions or emotional mind. And mano means cognitive mind. Okay, so basically Bhante makes it very clear what Buddha was talking about when he used the term mano or chitta or vijnana. And the other aspect of Bhante's teachings that differ is the process of perception, and that is Pañca-Khandha. And the full word is Pancha Upadana Khandha. Okay, so meaning when we experience perception, we have a tendency to cling on to it. That's why the word Upadana is there. But you can just call it in short Pañca-Khandha, the 5 constituents of the process of perception, which is our main topic today. And then following this in sometime in the future, we will talk about the Paticca Samuppada, okay? So, and then, of course, there are aspects of meditation that Bhante teaches that differ from what other people are describing. The main thing Bhante teaches us is basically to just relax and bring our attention inwards, which he says introspect. This is why our WhatsApp group is called Relax and Introspect. Okay, so that is really what meditation is about. Now, these are Bhante's main teachings that sometimes the detailed explanation may differ somewhat from other teachers. Okay. So let's, okay, the first part on Mano Chitta Vijnana has already been covered very extensively in the first 3 recollections. For those of you who have watched it, you know what I'm talking about. And I hope all of you have seen the video I sent out before we start this recollection 4, the one on Pañca-Khandha, and that is the main topic today. Very importantly, whatever we hear about the teachings of the Buddha, Bhante has always reminded us, apply an experiential mindset, not existential. So don't think things in terms of existence, but think in terms of how we experience it. So it's very important to keep this in mind every time we listen to the teachings of the Buddha, especially the way Bhante explains it. It's all very experiential. Okay. So we all live in this world, which we often call existential world. And this is why we have a tendency to think in terms of existence, think in terms of physical things. because we are organisms in an environment, and the first thing that happens in the body is there is a process called metabolism, keeping the body alive. But what is important is that our five senses, five physical senses, plus our mind, collectively experience the environment through these six sensual fields. The five will experience the environment in a physical way, and the sixth one will basically put it all together. That's cognition. And this whole thing is going through a process called Pañca-Khandha. There are five stages. That's why some people call it five aggregates, but Bhante calls it the five constituents of the process of perception. Okay. So Bhante calls it the five constituents of the process of perception, and he doesn't use the word aggregate. Now, the word aggregate comes from the translation that Khandha refers to a pile of something that is piled up. So that's why it's called aggregate. They are piled up, but it's really not something that piles up. It's activities, stages of activity that we experience, but in the Pañca-Khandha, until it reaches the point of number 5, vijnana, everything seemed to be experiential and unconscious. We are not conscious of it. So today I'm going to explain in detail how we go through the first 4 stages without being conscious of it, and then only become aware of what we have seen, heard, smelled, tasted, or touched. Okay, so now let's have a quick mention of popular translation. I'm not going to deal with why they translate like that, and what are they mean, and how what is the meaning and detailed explanation. I will only focus on Bhante's translation. Rupa, Bhante says, is an image. It can be mental image, but it's basically image appearing in the mind. That's why it's called mental image, or you can simply say image. And most popular translations are form. And when we speak of form, you refer to shape and structure of an object. And this is why very often many translators use the word rupa to refer to physical object. But actually, it's really just talking about the shape and structure. So it's basically an image appearing in the mind. So from Bhante's perspective, it is an image appearing in the mind. And Vedana is basically talking about the feeling. Now, in this case, this is not an emotional feeling. This is really a feeling inside the nervous system. I'll explain that in detail later on. And Sanya is about the sensation. And Vedana and Sanya always go together. Then, of course, then they are all brought to the brain and constructed. And that process of construction is Sankara. Now, many people translate Sanya as perception. Perception simply means you are aware of something, you have basically interpreted what you have experienced. No, at this point, Sanya, you are not aware of Sanya. You know, it is long after it has been constructed that you become aware. You are not really conscious about how the Sanya arises or how the Vedana arises. So Vedana here is not emotional feeling. It is a feeling inside your nervous system which you are not conscious of. I'll explain that in detail later on. And so people often translate this Sanya as something you are aware of, but it's not. And then Sankara is constructing this, but unfortunately, different translators do not agree. But Bhikkhu Bodhi calls it volitional formation, which refers to the formation of karma. Again, karma is not at this stage. Karma is when you become fully aware of something and then you think about it and you want to react to it. That thinking, which is your intention, or they call it chetana, and your reaction, which is the action you take, that is karma. But that happens much after this. So we're going to just focus on all this and come to that at the end of today's presentation, how karma is constructed after you experience Pañca-Khandha. And then Bhikkhu Sujato calls it choices. I'm not sure why he calls it choices. Perhaps choices means you have the ability to choose how you react. Again, that has to do with karma. And Tanisaru Bhikkhu calls it fabrications. Now, I want to point out the word fabrications is often used to describe you create something out of some material. So basically, you fabricate a dress from clothes and threads and all that. So this is fabrication is creating a new thing from raw material. That's really what fabrication means. So I'm not going to go into details about why they translate that, but what Bhante says is it's basically bringing Sanya Vedana together and then constructing them into a mental image. And at the same time, when the mental image arises in the mind, we have this consciousness of the perception. Okay. Now, the word consciousness, we have to be very careful. When we talk about the five senses, the word consciousness refers to sense consciousness, not consciousness as a whole. But when we talk about the mind, the mano, and then we talk about consciousness as a whole. All this will be explained in a few moments when I go through the whole thing, okay? So let's focus on Bhante Punnaji's translation. Now, by the way, before I go further, I will be explaining certain things in stages, and at the end of a certain stage, before I get on to something new or something deeper, I will pause for a moment and see if anyone has questions. So if you do have questions, quickly write it down first. Then at the end of each section, I will then ask you, and then you can then bring up your questions. Okay, so let me go through step by step first, and then at the end of each step, I will ask for questions. Okay. So very importantly, the way Bhante has translated and explained Pañca-Khandha, he's really describing about how the nervous system reacts to and processes sense organ stimulations from the environment. That means activities in the environment stimulate our five physical senses, and Pañca-Khandha is about the nervous system reaction and processing of these stimulations. Okay. And this leads to experiencing the environment. We begin to experience the environment because of our five senses, and then our cognition puts it all together. And then we become aware. Becoming aware is the cognition part. So we become aware of the environment. And Bhante Punnaji's translations and explanations are fully consistent with the findings from neuroscience as discussed in today's recollections. So I'm going to use the explanation from neuroscience to explain why Bhante translate them in this way. So Bhante's explanations are fully consistent. Other people's translation come from a different perspective, so they may have nothing to do with the nervous system, and therefore it's hard to connect them. One thing I would like to suggest to all of you, many of you may have read the translation and explanation of Pañca-Khandha from other teachers, and you may have formed certain concepts or ideas about what Pañca-Khandha is. What I'm trying to tell you now is don't try to connect what Bhante is explaining with what the other teachers are explaining. You're going to get confused, guaranteed. Because once you start trying to connect Bhante's explanation, which connects with nervous system reaction and processing, if you try to use that to relate to what other people are saying, it doesn't make sense. So you're going to get confused. So when you listen to Bhante Punnaji's translations and explanations, please just ignore what you have heard from other teachers for the moment, so that you can fully understand Bhante Punnaji's explanations. So the experience of seeing depends on the presence of necessary condition, and light is one of them. It is light reflected from the physical object, and then the reflected light entering the eye, and this is what we call stimulus or stimulations of the eye. And then inside the eye, if we are paying attention, the eye is the sense organ. If we are paying attention, then the process of perception takes place, and we eventually become aware of what we have seen. At the end of this process of perception, at the end of Pañca-Khandha, we become aware of what we see. That is when it reaches the Vijnana stage, okay? Before it arrives at the Vijnana stage, we are not aware, right? So this is really what is happening here. And then when we become aware, there's a mental image arising in the mind, and then we form a perception. That's Vijnana. Then we are aware of what we have just seen through the eyes, and we call this an experience. So think of it from experiential perspective. The problem with experience, until we become enlightened, as normal beings, not yet enlightened, even up to the stage of anagami, this will still happen to us. Whenever we experience something, we have a tendency to create concepts about what we have experienced. And we break this into two parts. That's why it's called the dichotomy of experience, breaking it into objective and subjective. So when we see something out there, we always think, oh, that thing is out there, then there must be something in here. So then we start to think and project the concept, there is a dog out there. So the word dog is the label we assign to what we have just seen in a categorized manner. So it's nama. And when we say out there, we're talking about the world out there. And that is when we begin to feel something about it. That is the emotional feeling. That comes long after mental image has arisen in the mind. Okay, it does not happen before that. So when the mental image arises, we have the tendency to project that, and then we feel about it. That Vedana at that point is the emotional reaction. And that Vedana is different from the Vedana inside the Pañca-Khandha. And I'm going to explain that because this is one of the crucial questions I get. Many people ask, the Vedana inside the Pañca-Khandha, is that different from the Vedana we experience in the Paticca-Samuppada? The short answer is the two are similar in terms of a feeling, a reaction. But one is nervous system reaction, the other is emotional reaction from the chitta. So they are, in that sense, different. Okay, Vedana as a Pali term, it's the same in both cases. It's talking about feeling. But the difference is inside Pañca-Khandha, it is the nervous system that is feeling it. We're not aware of it. And when we talk about Paticca-Samuppada at stage number 7, that Vedana there is our emotional feeling about what we have experienced. So in that sense, they are different. So we talk very quickly, we just run through the discussion of stimulation of the eye because I need to remind everybody about it. Visible light is electromagnetic radiation. Now be aware, in the sensual world, electronic radiation is constantly happening all around us. Some we can see, and that is visible light we can see. Some we cannot see. So the visible light we can see is a range of radiation within certain frequencies that in the whole spectrum, within certain frequency that is perceivable by the human eye. And this definition is given by the International Commission on Illumination. This is the world body where all the scientists get together and they have a consensus agreement that when we speak of visible light, it is the electromagnetic radiation within a certain spectrum that the eye can see. But electromagnetic radiation is happening all around us. The ones we cannot see can be picked up by certain instruments, like the Webb, the telescopes. They can pick it up and then they display it in colors that we can see. But the radiation coming from the universe, from the stars, many of it we cannot see. But these telescopes can pick it up and then they will show it in the colors that we can see. That's why sometimes they show these beautiful bright colors of the sky showing the universe, different parts of the universe and all that. But when we look in the sky, we don't see it. Right? This is because they translated from the telescopes into visible spectrum we can see. So light waves have different frequencies, and light falls onto the retina of the eyeball. At the back of the eyeball, there is the retina, and which has optic nerves, right? And these optic nerves, actually, there's light sensitive cell first, and when the light sensitive cell picks up stimulations, it sends it through the optic nerves into the brain, and capable of sensing different frequencies. Optic nerves carry the impulse caused by the light stimulations of the optic nerves to the brain to be processed. And that processing is the construction in the visual cortex at the back of your cerebral cortex, okay? And you can see this is the very small part of the spectrum of electromagnetic radiation that we can see. So that range in blue, right, the range of light frequencies visible to the human eye is such a small part of the entire spectrum of electromagnetic radiation. The common word for electromagnetic radiation is light. We call it light, but actually it's electromagnetic radiation going around us. Electromagnetic radiation is represented in various forms, right? When we are talking about very short wavelength, a very high frequency, then it is the highest is gamma rays, right, on the left, and then X-rays, and then ultraviolet radiation, and then only into visible spectrum of light that our human eyes can see. And then when the frequency slows down, that means the wavelength gets bigger, the frequency slows down. Outside this visible light spectrum, it goes into infrared, microwave, FM radio, television waves, shortwave radio, and very slow waves, right? Long wavelength, slow frequency, that is way down in the shortwave radio spectrum. So we only see a very small part, this very small part of the radiation. It is known, scientists have tested, now this is nervous system response. High frequency light appear to produce a pleasant sensation. Low frequency light, on the other hand, can be unpleasant. This has nothing to do with whether you like red light or you like blue light or not. When your eye picks up high frequency, which is the blue, the violet, up to the high end of the green, this range of light is pleasant or soothing to the nervous system. When the frequency slows down into the yellow, orange, and then red, this becomes unpleasant. And I have demonstrated in the video that when you look at a certain color, it is pleasant, certain color is unpleasant. This has nothing to do with your emotional liking of red. A person may love red color, and therefore he says, oh, red is pleasant. No, that is your emotional reaction. Red is unpleasant to the nervous system. And that unpleasantness is Vedana. The sensing of light is be picked up, that sensation, that is Sanya. So we'll come to that now. Sensation of light stimulation. Sanya is the sensing of different light frequencies by the optic nerves. This is the sensation of light stimulations of the eye. Different frequencies of light is interpreted as colors. Colors do not exist out there. Out in the universe, there's no such thing called color. It's just frequency of electromagnetic radiation. High frequency is violet, blue, and then dark green. This is high frequency light. Low frequency light is getting into yellow, orange, and then red. Okay, so there's no such thing as color. Right? It's the frequency of light, and the mind interprets them as color and give it a label: blue, green, red, orange, yellow, right, purple, whatever. So basically, color do not exist out in the environment. It is just light at different wavelengths or different frequencies. This is electromagnetic radiation going on at different frequencies. Color is the mind's interpretation of different light frequencies by labeling them red, green, blue, yellow, orange, whatever. That's just a name we give to what was seen, the nama we give to what was seen, and what was seen in an image is the rupa. That's why nama rupa. So let's quickly review this important video to look at sensation of colors.
Some scientists claim the simple act of seeing a colour triggers a spontaneous reaction in the nervous system. This is automatic. It isn't caused by any association, but by the wavelength of the colour. Objects reflect light at different wavelengths. Our brain interprets these wavelengths as different colours, from blue, the shortest wavelength, through green and yellow, to red, the longest. The long wavelengths, the reds and oranges, are said to arouse the nervous system. Heart rate and blood pressure increase. The short wavelengths, the blues and violets, are meant to relax the nervous system.
So the feeling, the sensation is sanya, right? And Vedana is the reaction of the nervous system to light frequencies and intensity. Both affect the nervous system. The frequency, which means whether, for lack of a better word, the color, right? The frequency, and the intensity, how strong it is. So red, yellow, and orange in between, this agitate the nervous system, causing unpleasant reactions in the nervous system. That's why the Vedana is unpleasant, right? When we detect red and yellow. By the way, it's very important. This is the reason why many sports teams, they're very smart. They use red for their jersey, right? Manchester United and a few others, because they were very smart. When the opposite team charges at you wearing red, it causes some fear, in the person at the other end. So this is why some people choose red as their jersey. Yeah, it's not because somebody likes red. It's simply because they're using psychology. Red arouses agitation in the nervous system. So the opposition will be frightened of the red, right? Blue and green, on the other hand, have a tendency to soothe or calm the nervous system, causing pleasant feeling of sensation. So when the eye picks up red and yellow, Vedana is unpleasant. When the eye picks up blue and green, Vedana is a little more pleasant, right? Then bright light is also unpleasant. Dim light is more pleasant. Therefore, Vedana is not whether you like or dislike a color. It is the brain's autonomic reaction to the different light frequencies and intensities. Okay. Now let's look at how it is constructed, the construction of an image.
So 3 ways of seeing it, that is called Vedana. Vedana we translate as feeling, how you feel the color, whether you feel it as something pleasant or unpleasant or neutral. That's the feeling. And the color we call the sensation. So the sensation and the feeling of the sensation. That is what is called Vedana and Sanya. Sanya is the sensation, Vedana is the feeling. So these 2 things are like the 2 bricks that make the wall. Just as you make a wall out of bricks, you make use of the Vedana and the Sanya to create the rupa, the picture. So the picture or the mental image is created by the color and the feeling. And that creation or construction is what is called sankhara. Sankhara is the construction.
So Bhante used the word brick walls. Each brick is really a combination of Sanya Vedana pair. So each brick is then used, the construction process builds it up. Because of the word construction, therefore he's using brick wall as an example. For me personally, this is my personal choice. I personally prefer to call it jigsaw puzzle, like putting different pieces of the jigsaw puzzle together to build up that big picture. All right. So basically, that's really what it is. Each brick in this case represents a pair of Sanya Vedana. Now, Sanya Vedana always go together. They are not separable, right? If you touch, for example, when you touch your hand, that contact with the hand stimulates the sense organs, the sense nerves behind the skin. That is picking up sensation. But at the same time, if you hit the hand hard, it is unpleasant. So the Vedana and the Sanya go together. When it picks up the sensation, it is whether the sensation is pleasant or unpleasant to the nervous system. That's why the nervous system picks up the sensation. That's the Sanya. At the same time, certain forms of sensations are pleasant, certain forms are not pleasant. Red and orange light is unpleasant, blue and green light is pleasant. So that is why Vedana Sanya always go together as a pair, inseparable. And mental construction takes place. Sanya and Vedana are like bricks that make up a brick wall. And I call it jigsaw puzzle. And moment to moment, and this is every moment, millions or hundreds of millions of Vedana Sanya from the eye, right, they are sent to the brain to be constructed into a mental image. We call a picture in our mind. That was what we become conscious of after this. And then we form a perception. Vedana at this stage is not whether we like or dislike. Right? Inside the Pañca-Khandha, the Vedana and Sanya, Vedana at this point is not whether we like or dislike what we have seen. Vedana in Pañca-Khandha is the arousal of our nervous system by the sensations, Sanya, in the optic nerves. Liking or disliking of what we see is an emotional assessment by the chitta, which comes long after Pañca-Khandha has taken place. So by chitta, which arises after we interpret, papancha, give meaning to the overall picture of what we have seen out there with our eyes. So by this time, the original Vedana in the Pañca-Khandha is long gone. Long after that, we form the mental image. That's when we like or dislike what we have seen. Very quickly, touching on the neuroscience part of it, this is the eyeball. At the back of the eyeball on the right side is the retina wall. And the retina wall, there is one part of the retina wall where all the nerves and the blood vessels exit that retina wall to go to the brain. What blood vessels go into the heart and nerves go to the brain. Okay, so that point where it exits, there is no space for light-sensitive cells. Therefore, that part is called blind spot. Blood vessels and optic nerves exit the retina at that spot. Therefore, that spot is not sensitive to any light. Right? That's why we have every human being, every animal, actually, every living organism with eyes, there is a blind spot where blood vessels and light-sensitive optic nerves exit the retina, right? And the nerves go to the brain, the blood vessels go to the heart. So in the middle of the retina is a portion called the macula. And this is where light-sensitive cells are. There's 150 million of two types of light-sensitive cells, rod cells and cone cells. Okay. So, and then right in the middle of the macula, right in the middle, a very small part of it, right? It's almost like a dot. This is where the concentration of cone cells are, right? Cone cells are cells that pick up different colors in sharp images, in sharp pixels. The rest are rod cells. Rod cells pick up blurry gray shades, okay? And that's why the fovea is in the middle, but macula is the bigger one on the outer part. As light comes in, it strikes the retina wall, and at the fovea part, it picks up the sharp colors. So there are approximately 150 million rod and cone cells inside the macula area. And most of the rod cells, majority of it, 120 million of it is concentrated, right? Sorry, the rod cells are everywhere, and it is the cone cells that are concentrated inside the fovea. So around 120 million of cone cells are concentrated in the fovea area, which picks up red, green, and blue colors. These are the cone cells. The rod cells pick up shades of gray, blurry pixels. Each dot is blur, right? Not sharp. And the cone cells sense specific colors in sharp focus, specific range of color. And that's what it looks like. In the retina, the three color cone cells, red, green, and blue, and the gray rod cells. Altogether, there's 150 million of them, 120 million of cone cells are concentrated in the fovea. So let's take a look at how the image comes in. We see a picture like Mona Lisa. And the way the image enters the eye, right, the reflected light from the picture of Mona Lisa, it's reflected light entering the eye. When it passes through the lens, the image is reversed. So what falls onto the retina is an inversed image of what was out there. This is very interesting. That's why the reconstruction is, you cannot even fathom what's going on inside the process of construction, Sankara. It's very complex. So the image that falls onto the back of the retina, where the macula and the fovea is, the image is reversed. Now, just for clarity, I will show it in right side up so you can see. What is being picked up is dots, bits and pieces, pixels we call it. Bhante calls it bricks. Each dot is a brick. For me, it's a pixel, and it is these pixels that make up the jigsaw puzzle. So each red, green, blue cone cell in the fovea senses one sharp pixel of the image, while the rod cells in the macula, there are also a small number of rod cells in the fovea, but majority of it is in the macula area. The cone cells are concentrated in the fovea. And these rod cells pick up blurred gray pixels. So moment to moment, the optic nerve sensations, the sanya, and the nervous system reaction, the vedana, are then transmitted through the optic nerves to the back of the cerebral cortex, the visual cortex at the back. That's where the visual cortex is to process images. So the construction inside the brain is happening inside the visual cortex. And this is making up this jigsaw puzzle, but they call it brick wall. We're referring to the same thing. I just prefer to use the term jigsaw puzzle. They are reconstructed, and that process is sankara, and then an image appears in the mind. This is no longer a physical image. This is the experience of what was seen with the eye. Okay. So let's look at the overall neuroscience explanation. This is actually not very long. It appears long, but it's only 2 minutes plus. Okay. So let's go through the whole thing again. Then I'll explain further.
Ophthalmologist Dr. Bill Elwood takes a snapshot of the back of the eye.
What you can see here are blood vessels running over the surface of the retina, and beneath them are light-sensitive cells, which allow you to see.
Lining the inside of each eyeball, there are over 100 million light-sensing cells. But only the bigger cone cells see in colour. And amazingly, only in one tiny area of each eye are there enough of these cone cells jam-packed tightly together for sharp colour vision.
Most of the retina gives you vision which is quite blurry, apart from this very small area in the middle.
Just that smudge that we can see there.
This little smudge here that gives you really fine, detailed vision.
And that bright spot is even odder, an area which is completely blind.
That's where all the blood vessels come in and out, and where all the optic nerve fibres go back to the brain. And there's so much going on there that there aren't actually any light-sensitive cells in that area, and that corresponds to your blind spot. So it is a very odd design.
So if our eyes are designed with a blind spot and a mostly blurred image, how do we see the world in such intricate detail and vivid colour? The patchy image made at the back of the eye is just the beginning of how we see. As our eyes dart around, we make sure that anything interesting is lined up on our sharp spot, so we get a good look at it. And you don't know you're doing it, because the brain takes these jerky snapshots and creates a nice smooth movie of the world. And the brain also compensates for the blind spot. Because our eyes give us slightly different images, we can combine them to give one complete picture.
So this is really what's going on. The retina is picking up bits and pieces from that image, right? And the eyeball is really darting around, okay? So, and picking up each brick or each piece of a jigsaw puzzle constructed. All right, let's take a look at this picking up.
As our eyes dart around, we make sure that anything interesting is lined up on our sharp spot, so we get a good look at it. And you don't know you're doing it, because the brain takes these jerky snapshots and creates a nice smooth movie of the world.
So let me show you an experiment. See, the eyeball is really picking up bits and pieces from out there. It is not seeing the whole image, bits and pieces, picking up one pixel at a time. Okay, so let me illustrate this to you. Whether your eye is seeing the whole image or your eye is really darting around. Look at my two fingers. Can you focus sharply on both my fingers at the same time? No. If you are seeing both fingers, either your eyeball is darting back and forth between the two fingers, or you're looking at the middle sharply and then somehow the two fingers are in the peripheral vision. But if you want to see my two fingers in sharp contrast, your eye has to be darting back and forth, right? Now you say, oh, the two fingers are too far apart. Okay, let me put the two fingers side by side. Can you focus on both my two fingers at the same time? Both are in full focus. No. Your eyeball is darting back and forth between the two fingers. Try and focus the two fingers at the same time. No. So that proves the point that your eyeball is really darting back and forth, right? And you're not aware of it. It's happening all the time. So that is really what's going on. I'm going to show you an example. Why we're picking up different colors and building up. This is a beautiful color pictures of color balloons. Okay, give me a moment. Oh yeah, here it is. this beautiful color, right? This color image. You think you are seeing full color, but actually you are not. Now I'm breaking it down into different colors. You see? You're not really seeing that image in full color. It's all the different pixels of the different color coming together to form this beautiful color image, okay? So that is explanation from neuroscience. So I hope that helps you understand how we actually see and why Bhante translates Pañca-Khandha the way he does, right? So moment to moment, hundreds of millions of Sanya Vedana combinations are sent to the visual cortex in the brain and assembled together to create a mental image or the picture in the mind. And Sankara is that process that assembles it, and the image is the rupa. Now we have covered the eye. Very quickly, I will talk about a couple of other senses, especially the complex one is the ear, the hearing, and the other complex one is the touch. Right. First, the hearing.
Sounds are just tiny movements of the air molecules around us, but our ears contain a wonderful system for detecting these faint ripples in the air. First, the sound waves are funneled down the ear canal to the eardrum. If they were slowed down massively, this is what they'd look like. The moving air makes the eardrum vibrate. These vibrations are then amplified by 3 hinged bones. The bones are connected to a curled tube called the cochlea, which is full of fluid. The vibrations of the bones send ripples through the fluid, and these ripples move rows of microscopic hair cells. As the hair cells are bent, they send nerve signals to the brain, which then works out what the sound is. It's an extraordinary contraption, but it works beautifully.
Sound. Sound is nothing but vibrations of air molecules. If there are no molecules in the air, which is the majority of outer space, then there is no sound. That's why you can't hear sounds in outer space. But in planet Earth, the air is full of molecules, okay? So sound is vibration of air molecules. So vibration, as I speak, my vocal cord vibrates the air, and this vibration of air strikes the eardrum. So the eardrum is a piece of membrane picking up air molecule vibrations. And this vibration is very subtle. The fact that it's so subtle, it is not able to pick it up easily. And because of that, nature has that, the way we have evolved, behind the eardrum are 3 bones connected in such a way that a microscopic vibration on the eardrum amplifies it through these 3 bones. These 3 bones are connected to a part of the ear canal inside the ear. That part is called the cochlea. Cochlea is that little organ that senses air vibration. Okay, so the 3 bones are connected to the cochlea. So when air molecules vibrate the eardrum, they are amplified by the 3 bones, and the vibration of the cochlea become amplified. Right? Inside the cochlea, it is filled with fluid. Cochlea is like a snail sort of squirreling around. So inside is fluid, and inside the cochlea are hair particles. Well, they're not really hair, but they're like hair particles. Each of these hair particles is connected to one auditory nerve. So therefore, there are millions of them, and there are millions of auditory nerves. They go to the brain for processing. So when the cochlea vibrates, the fluid inside the cochlea shakes, and therefore this hair particle move. So this movement is amplified first by the three bones, and now inside the liquid, the fluid inside the cochlea makes this hair particle vibrate even strongly, and therefore the auditory nerve pick up the vibration. This picking up of this vibration is sanya. And at the same time, whether the vibration is high frequency, high pitched, or low frequency, low pitch sound, or very loud sound, or soft sound, that is the Vedana. Okay, let's come to that in a moment. So sanya is sensation of the vibration picked up by individual auditory nerve connected to each hair inside the cochlea. It's not really hair, but it's a kind of fiber like hair, okay? And this senses the vibration of the air molecules that strike the eardrum. It is amplified by the three bones, and the three bones shake the cochlea, and the fluid shaking inside amplifies the whole thing, right? So therefore, these so-called hair are very sensitive to vibration. So it's picking up sound. Frequency of vibration represents the pitch. The higher frequency, the higher pitch. And the lower frequency, the lower pitch, right? And then there is also amplitude, which is the loudness of the sound, the strength of the vibration, strong vibration or weak vibrations, fast vibration, high frequency, high pitch, or slow vibration, low frequency, low pitch, okay? So Vedana is the arousal of the nervous system from these vibrations, from the sanya, in the auditory nerves. And high-pitched sound and loud sounds irritate the nervous system. Low-pitched sound, soft sounds soothe the nervous system. I'm not talking about whether you like high-pitched sound or you don't like high-pitched sound. See, if I speak in a very high-pitched voice, very high-pitched, it's very irritating to the ear. But if I were to speak in a low-pitched sound, and it kind of is more soothing, isn't it? See? There is this high pitch is irritating, low pitch is soothing. It has nothing to do with whether you like or not. I don't mean anything negative, but there are many females with very high pitched voice. I know there are some males with high pitched voice also. Now, you have to be aware. If you happen to have high pitched voice, be aware of this. When you speak with high pitched voice, you are less likable, as you know, from what people hear. So just be aware of that. Nothing personal, but be aware. If you happen to have a very high-pitched voice and you speak with that, people sort of don't like to hear high-pitched voice generally. Of course, there is the opposite also holds true. Let's say a young man chasing after this young girl. He wants her attention. And this young girl happens to have a very high-pitched voice. So every time she speaks, the young man is very happy, you know, and he says, I love your voice, even though it's so high-pitched. But in general, there are many politicians who actually train themselves to lower the pitch. And one of them is actually proven way back, 30, 40 years ago, I think, Margaret Thatcher. If you happen to have recording of Margaret Thatcher when she was a young politician, you will notice she had a very high-pitched voice. So what did she do? She went on voice training and brought her voice to a lower pitch. She trained herself to speak in a lower pitch, but from time to time, when she gets upset, the high-pitched voice comes out, okay? That is one politician. There is another politician who long ago already knew that back in the university. One of the smartest women that ever was in the government of the US. She was once the Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton, during her college days, was already well aware of this. So she trained herself to speak in a low-pitched voice. This is why you notice Hillary Clinton speaks in a low-pitched voice, but when she gets upset, the pitch of her voice goes up back to her old natural self, okay? So these are classic examples of politicians, female politicians who train themselves to speak in a lower pitch voice, okay? Because they don't want to create this unpleasant sensation in the hearer or listener. So Vedana is not whether you like or don't like, because Vedana is an emotional assessment by the chitta, which comes after. Next is touch. Now, this is very interesting. Underneath the skin, there are many different types of touch receptors. Okay, you have firstly something that senses temperature, sensing temperature. You also have something that senses vibration, high frequency vibration or low frequency vibration. Okay, and then you have something that senses pain, specifically pain and texture. So when it is something sharp, it is painful. When it's something rounded, it is soothing. Okay, and you have something that also senses pressure, right? When you press. So all these are various different senses. There are also a few other subtle ones. So all these are picking up different variations of sanya, and millions of them are brought to the brain to be processed. And hot surface is unpleasant. That is the Vedana part. Unpleasant first to your nervous system, right? Cool is pleasant, but cold is also unpleasant, okay? And then you also have other things like sharp objects are unpleasant. Rounded objects are a little more pleasant than sharp objects. And then other types of, other texture of feeling on the skin. All these are millions of sanya brought to the brain, and these sanya come with the Vedana, right? Hot is unpleasant, cool is pleasant, cold is unpleasant, right? Something like that. So that is how touch. So I won't go to the other senses, but I think you already get the idea. What is sanya, sensation, and what is Vedana, the feeling in the nervous system. Okay. So these five, from different five physical sense organs are brought into the brain, assembled into a big picture of the world out there. You see, the world out there is not just one object you see. The world out there is the overall picture. Okay. And let's take a look at the overall picture.
The word vijnana is not properly translated today by the British people who translated, like Rice Davids. It's mainly the translation of Rice Davids. There is a dictionary written by Rice Davids, and all the people who translate into English, they use that dictionary to find the words. But there are mistakes in those words, because if the wrong word is being used to translate the Pali word, we don't understand it properly. So the mistake here is what is called chakku vijnana. That means the understanding which is really a perception, eye perception, chakku vijnana. Sota vijnana is the ear perception. Gana vijnana is the nose perception. Jivha vijnana is the tongue perception. Kaya vijnana is the body perception. But when it comes to the activity of the brain, where all these things come and meet, that is called mano vijnana. The brain activity is called mano. So when it comes to mano vijnana, the word that is used, not perception, it is conception. You see, mano vijnana is not a perception, it is a conception, which means we are thinking and forming a concept, an idea. So this is why today all the perceptions are called consciousness. So it is not correct. The word consciousness can be used only for the mano vijnana. Others are perceptions. Chakku vijnana is a perception. Only mano vijnana is a conception. And that is where we can call it consciousness, becoming conscious. So this is very important to understand And another important word that we can use in modern psychology, even the manovinyana is what is called cognition. That manovinyana, the modern word used in psychology is cognition. And it is the cognition that we begin to comprehend something like we recognize. Now, when I look at this, we say this is a cup, and the cup may be made of clay. All that is cognition. We recognize. When we use the word recognize, what are we saying? Recognition. Recognition is recognition. And how do we know that this is the cup? Because I have seen cups before, and I put this cup into that category of percepts. So I am categorizing what I see here by putting it into a category. And that is how I recognize this as a cup. If I have never seen cups before, I cannot look at it and say this is a cup. So this is why we have to be very careful in using the words. And some of these things have not been properly understood by the translators who translated these Pali words. This is why it has become necessary to give new translations. And that is what I am doing.
So Bhante is giving his updated translations of what is really happening. So the five senses, picking up the five different types of sensations from the environment brought to the brain to be processed. And the processing of the brain, that process is the cognitive process, putting it all together. And each sense organ's input is a perception. And when they are put together, the mind creates the concept. Right? So this is the process of cognition. And what was recognized, right? They call it recognized because it is now being put together. It was already sensed earlier on through the sense organ. Now it's being put together. So recognizing it. That's why it's called recognize. That's why the English word, we recognize something. It's actually recognize something. So let's listen to Bhante continue to talk a little bit about this.
The Chakku Vijnana is a Vijnana. That is what you see with your eye. What you hear with your ear is also Vijnana. But that is called Sota Vijnana. What you smell with your nose is also Vijnana. But that is a different Vijnana. It's called Gana Vijnana. Then what you taste with your tongue is also Vijnana, but it is different. It's Jivha Vijnana. Then what you feel with the touch, that is also Vijnana. But it is called Kaya Vijnana. So, Vijnana can be different Vijnanas. Then, what you think with your mind is also Vijnana. That is called Mano Vijnana. So, there are different kinds of Vijnana. No? But Mano Vijnana is not perception. It is conception. That is the difference.
So, sense perceptions are those five, and then the mind perception is consciousness and cognition. And categorization occurs when we see something, we begin to put it in a category, showing you this For those of you who have not seen this before, you're seeing this for the first time. What do you call this? Oh, computer mouse. Why did you call it a mouse? Because inside your mind, you have remembered having seen hundreds of different mouse before. The moment you see this, it looks like a mouse. You put it in the category of computer mouse, right? That's really how the mind works, that the papancha. And then we give it a name, mouse, nama, right? And then we begin to create concepts. So these are the three parts of the mind that is experiencing everything. Vijnana is the one that experiences the environment through the sense organ, right? And then Mano is putting it together, categorizing it, identifying the perceived image, and giving it a name, nama, and cognizing the experience into concepts and choices. And this is where we can choose what to do with it. And then Chitta is our mood and temperament. Why did Bhante use the word mood and temperament? Mood is basically how you feel about something, and at this point, the Vedana, the feeling, this Vedana at this point is how you feel about what you have experienced. This is your emotional assessment and emotional reaction. This Vedana is somewhat different from the Vedana inside the Pañca-Khandha. So the two are not really the same. But the word Vedana means the same thing. It's just a feeling. One is feeling of the nervous system. The other one is the feeling in the Chitta. Okay. So these are the three parts of mental experience. The Vijnana is the perception, the perceiving part. The Mano is the cognizing part, cognition, right? And also forming concepts.
What is this?
Object.
Huh?
Object.
What?
Object.
Do you call this an object?
Content.
What? What do you call it?
Container, box.
You call it a container. How do you know that it is a container? How do you know? How do you know it is a container?
With predominant idea.
No. You have seen containers before. You have seen containers before, and so you are giving that same name to this container. So that means you have a memory. You have a memory. You remember seeing something like that before. So you have put it into a class of objects. The name container is the name of a class of objects. That is called categorizing. It is a category of objects. And if you see an animal like a dog, so you can look at that and say, this is a dog. How do you know? Because you have seen dogs before. And you are categorizing that object and calling it a dog. You understood? That when you say cognition, you are doing all those things and identifying the object and say, this is such and such an object. Did you understand that? So that is the meaning of cognition. In the cognition, you have what is called recognition. You recognize, you call it, you recognize. Recognize means recognition. That is, you put it into a class, a category. Now you see the difference between perception, conception, and cognition.
These are the three parts of the mental experience we call mind. And chitta is where we begin to feel something about it. And this feeling is the vedana in the chitta. And then we have the emotional urge to do something about it. Right? And whatever we do, we tend to be self-centered. We tend to relate it to me, I, me, and mine. So basically, in overall, the process of experience is the 5 different senses pick up sensations from the environment and form a perception. So the mind have a mental image, and then we have the perception. And then we begin to cognize it. And cognizing it is to interpret it. And this interpretation process is called papancha, from categorized memory of the fluid past. And that is why we call it recognition. And then we become aware and give something a name. And that giving something a name is creating a concept. This is the concept of an entity identified as a dog. Dog is the name we give to it out there in the world, right? So we have this tendency that whatever we perceive, the dichotomy of experience breaks it up as what's out there and what's in here. So that dog is out there, and that's what is the world. And what is in here is the self. We tend to be self-centered. The self doesn't exist. It's just the mind creating the notion there is a self experiencing the world. But this is because of the way the mind works. It breaks that experience into 2 parts, creating the feeling of a self-centeredness. So therefore, these are the 5 constituents of the process of perception. There are a couple of questions I want to quickly deal with that has been asked by people earlier on, emailing and WhatsApping me. Okay. One of the questions, okay, how come rupa appears first and not last in the sequence? Interesting question. I also was very puzzled by this. If we pick up sensations from the environment, reconstruct it and form a mental image, why do we have rupa in the first place? So I asked Bhante this question. Now, really, this question, I'm referring to something going back as far as 10 or 15 years ago. So it's that long time ago that I asked Bhante, and I'm trying to recall in memory what he said to me. This was not put in writing, but it was verbally explained to me. It says, when the Buddha teaches something, he starts with the overall big picture, the concept. And then he breaks it down into how we experience this step by step. And that's what happens with the Pañca-Khandha. The Buddha started explaining that we have the mental image in the mind when we see something. And from there, he breaks it down into the Vedana, Sanya, Sankhara, Vijnana. Okay, so this was the verbal explanation. Now, I'm paraphrasing. I'm not repeating exactly what Bhante said to me, but roughly, Bhante's explanation is that when Buddha teaches something, he always starts with the big picture and then breaks it down and explains to people what has transpired. So that's really why rupa appears first. And that is actually, bear in mind, what we have in the sutras were verbally transmitted for many generations, 3 or 4 or even 5 generations, several generations later, before it gets put into writing. So there's a lot of verbal oral transmission of this before it gets put in. And along the way, some information gets lost. You have to be realistic. that when people transmit something verbally, after a few generations, maybe there's some parts of the information that is lost. So a more detailed explanation why rupa comes first was never transmitted. Right? So I'm just saying that, okay? So I'm just recalling from memory how Bhante explained it to me. So that answers that first question. And therefore, it's very important to apply an experiential mindset to everything we learn. Then there's a second question. Why does Vedana appear before Sanya? Interesting. There's no need to explain this, simply because Vedana and Sanya always go together. When two things go together, now I have my hand, the two hands are together. When you want to describe that I have these two hands together, what do you say? My left hand is holding the right hand, or my right hand is holding the left hand. The two are going together. So therefore, Vedana comes first before Sanya, or Sanya comes first before Vedana. It's not necessary to try to say which comes first, because the two are going together. And in fact, Bhante explained in the Paticca Samuppada, it's called concurrence, right? So it's a concurrence of whatever that is happening. So therefore, whether you put Sanya first and then Vedana, or Vedana first, then Sanya, doesn't matter. The two always go together. So you cannot separate and say you have one without the other. It doesn't happen. And then, yeah, I think that's the questions I have so far. Now I will go on to, okay, before I go on to talk about how karma is constructed, let's pause here for a moment and see if you have questions, okay? Any questions?
Brother PD,
Yes.
I'm Pui Liu.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. It's very, very, very good, and we can recall back what Bhante Punnaji has taught us. I have one question about translation. Usually, when we say Nama Rupa, the translation is materiality and mentality. But now I realize that actually these five Pañca-Khandha, they are mental. So when they are mental, the materiality is something that is cause confusion. What do you think, Brother PD?
Yeah, the translation by Rice Davids and all the other people cause confusion in a nutshell. Bhante doesn't call it materiality and mentality, but people translate it because why? They are having existential mindset. Everything they think of is in terms of physical existence. This is why the word rupa is often translated as object out there, physical object. So people call Pañca-Khandha start with rupa because, oh, there is an object out there. And then we see that object. My point to people is very simple. You don't see the materiality. You don't see the physical object. If you see the physical object, you are saying that object entered your eye. What entered your eye? Light reflected from that object. If there's no light, then you don't see. So therefore, it is experiential. This is also why very important when you try to understand the Dharma, the Buddha Dharma, always try to think of it from an experiential mindset. Think of it as an experience. So materiality and mentality, these are not experiential. These are existential. So take the mind away from existential mindset and think of it as experience. So Pañca-Khandha, as I have explained so far, with the way the five constituents come together, this is experiential. How the nervous system picks it up, and then we experience everything when we put it all together. I hope that answers your question.
Very good. Thank you very much.
Okay, good. Any other question to deal with before I go and talk about the creation of karma? Okay, there are no other questions. All right, let's move on. Okay, so moving on. We talk a little bit about the experience now, how karma is created. I've already covered this. All right. So process of experience. Now, whatever I say, please keep an experiential mindset to try to understand better. Activities from the environment stimulate our five senses. And Pañca-Khandha picks it up and produces a perception of what was seen, heard, smell, taste, or touch. The various five perceptions from the physical senses. The mind processes it, interprets it. Did somebody have a question? No. Okay. The mind processes it, gives it a meaning, and this whole process is really the conception, conceiving. And that is when chitta kicks in. Chitta is aware of this, and that emotional mind begins to see whether it is pleasant or unpleasant. It's like some people, they find green light unpleasant. They prefer red light. So even though red is irritating the nervous system, but people still like red light, right? So I think someone raised the question. Okay, brother, one of the brother has raised a question.
Brother Billy,
Yes.
can you explain about Papanch?
Okay, you can go back to my first 3 recollections where
Okay,
Papancha
okay.
is explained very thoroughly. I assume
Thank
you have
you.
not seen it. So
Thank you.
I won't repeat what was done in the recollection 1, 2, and 3. 1 and 2 explain very thoroughly. Okay? So
Thank you so much.
that question will be answered in there. All right?
And
So,
by the way,
Ah.
certain terms, can I, like Brahma, Bhuto, other not related to this subject, not related to this chapter. Can I ask you in, say, through email?
yes,
or
please. You can email me, you can WhatsApp me, or even at the end of this presentation, when I then open to everybody's question, at that time, if you have something, you can bring it up. If I find it relevant or easy to answer quickly, I'll do that. If not, I'll do it some other time. Okay? But you
Thank
can
you
also
so much.
type your question into the chat box here. All right?
All right.
Okay,
All
so
right.
moving on. Okay, so moving on, the process of experience. And this is the time after we have experienced something, we feel something about it. This is now experiencing the big picture. And this big picture is put together. And this process of experiencing all the 5 sense organ, the 6 actually, including the mind, the memory, and all that, at this point in time, that putting it together, actually, that is called phassa. And phassa is translated as contact. I won't explain further now. I will talk about phassa when we in the next recollection, when I start talking about Pañca-Khandha, because phassa is explained very thoroughly in the Paticca Samuppada. I'm sorry. So in the next recollection, number 5 or number 6, we will talk about the Paticca Samuppada, where I explain more about phassa. Meanwhile, we just talk about, at this point, you are aware of something, then whether you feel good about it or you don't feel good about it, this is your emotional assessment, pleasant or unpleasant, about what you have just experienced. Now, this is consciousness. You are aware of what you have experienced. You now feel good about it or you don't feel good about it, pleasant or unpleasant feeling. And because of that, it disturbs your mind. Especially if it is something unpleasant, it disturbs your mind, your emotion, your chitta is disturbing the mano. This disturbance causes a lot of problem. And this disturbance can cause a lot of doubts, can cause a lot of friction in your mind. And that is what is called vicikiccha. Vicikiccha is often translated as skeptical doubt. No, vicikiccha is, the correct term which Bhante used is cognitive dissonance. That means the mind is being torn between what you are aware of and how you feel about it. And there is this friction going on between your how you feel about it and what you are aware of. And that causes a lot of physical stress and also mental distress. So physical stress, the simple word used by the Buddha is dukkha. Dukkha is suffering in general, but it is also used by Buddha specifically to refer to physical stress. And the mental distress is domanassa. So from time to time, Buddha uses the word dukkha to mean physical stress, and then domanassa to mean emotional or mental, emotional distress. When you see those two words are together, then dukkha is not talking about suffering as a whole, but about that physical bodily stress. Okay. In the same way, mano and chitta, from time to time, there are maybe some sutra verses where the Buddha uses the word chitta to refer to the mind in general. But in most cases, the word chitta is referred to the emotional mind. So here, your emotional mind is fighting with your cognitive mind. Okay. And it leads you to want to do something, and that wanting to do something is your intention. That is called chetana. Another word for it, which is commonly used, is volition. Volition arises with how you feel about something and what you want to do something about it. You haven't done it yet, but the intention behind it. That's why chetana is often called intention. But it also, volition is just another word. And what kind of intention or volition? Greed, hatred, and delusion of self. Lobha, dosa, moha. And this is the volitional reaction inside us. Right? This is the part where we begin to react. This because of the Vedana of what we have experienced. Right? Not the Vedana in the Pañca-Khandha, but the Vedana of the total experience after putting the five senses together. Right? And then we take action. Unskillful action. So karma is the action part that leads to consequence. This is how karma is created. Karma is created after we become aware of the big picture, and then we like or dislike the whole big picture, and then we want to do something about it. That is the creation of karma. Karma is not created inside the Pañca-Khandha, as far as the explanation of Bhante Punnaji is concerned. But there are many translators who refer to Pañca-Khandha as the creation of karma, because they say sankhara is volitional creation or volitional construction. In the same way, when they look at Paticca-Samuppada, they also basically describe sankhara at that point to be the creation of karma. But sankhara, inside the Pañca-Khandha, sankhara is not creating karma. Karma is created here because of the chitta, the chetana, and the karma. So now, consequences of your karma is vipaka. So that basically completes today's recollection, number 4. So quickly take note of this link. Take a snapshot, save your screen or use your phone. Take a snapshot of this link to download all the slides that are in today's presentation. And then you can go through it, send me an email, right? Connect me either through Facebook, email, or if you have my number, then WhatsApp, and then send me your questions, okay? So I hope you have taken note of the link, right? So let's take a look at any questions. Now we open to questions specific to today's sharing, and then at the end of it, other questions that that Brother Shankar has brought up. So questions specific about today's sharing. Anyone has any questions you want to raise? No questions? Oh, so I guess nobody has questions. All right. Brother Shankar, what's your question?
Yeah. Can you share your WhatsApp number?
Okay. Well, are you inside my relax relax and introspect group, WhatsApp group?
I'm not.
Okay, never
I'm
mind.
not
Send me an
sure.
email of your number and I'll contact you via WhatsApp. You have my
Thank
email.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Okay. Any other questions? You mentioned earlier you have some questions. Okay, so I guess there are no questions. Does that mean everybody understands everything or everybody is totally confused? So I guess if there are no more questions, we can bring this to an end, right? Okay, thank you very much, everyone. Stay safe. May you all be well, comfortable, and peaceful and happy. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Thank you so much, Brother Big.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank
Thank
you.
you so much.
All
Thank
right,
you
take
so much.
care. Okay, see you next time. Okay.